What candy is so bad that you'd turn it down if it were offered to you? I have barely scrolled and this entire list is like a list of all my dad's go-to candies. He's 68 years old. Necco. Black licorice. Wax bottles. Good and plenty. Etc. Growing up, I think he bought them just because he knew we hated them so he wouldn't have to share. But even now I still catch him eating Neccos. They're all god-awful. Pumpkin-flavored Laffy Taffy. Just tasting that stuff makes me gag. And I only ever had one piece of it. Once while visiting China, my in-laws offered me a piece of candy that looked exactly like a piece of baby corn but in gummy form. They told me it was corn candy, and was pretty well liked as a gummy bear-like equivalent. I was expecting a sweet-tasting candy but it tasted just like corn. So similar it was disturbing. I can't say it was disgusting because I genuinely do like corn. But it feels unholy to eat. That cheap chocolate in many coins. Bunnies etc. It has a rabbit smiling logo. I hate it. It's like skim chocolate. No consistency, no flavor, like wax. I cannot. Edit. As many said, Palmer is what I think of. Yes. Many other oily chocolates rather than cocoa butter likely yield same disappointment. That ribbon candy older ladies always seem to have in a candy dish. That 99.9% of the time becomes one giant candy. Sugar-free Haribo gummy bears. Better than X-Lax. What's the most out-of-touch thing you've heard a person say? Recently got a new job that paid double what I used to make. When I resigned, my former boss told me money isn't everything, lol. I was only making minimum wage before. Africa is a country. In front of an Ethiopian who insisted that Africa is a continent. Had a friend in dental school who grew up in the rich suburbs north of Detroit. We were talking about traveling. She was going to Thailand for spring break. And she said, I'd be surprised if most people hadn't traveled to at least 20 countries. I told her I'd be surprised if most people had ever left the US at all. Who is your chocolatier? That allowing ice fishing shacks would then give rise to prostitution. Had a millionaire tell me it was so great that even though we could all be making much more than we were at our nonprofit, we stayed for the kids, because who needs money when your job is rewarding? Quote. Plot twist. He was a board member who controlled our salaries. I was barely making enough to scrape by. What unofficial fan theory makes so much sense you consider it canon? Dora the Explorer is visually impaired. James Bond is the loud distraction that lets the real spies do their work undetected. As soon as he rocks up to a new location, he says, Bond. James Bond is here. The spy. I'm here. Mary Poppins is the same species as Pennywise. Except she feeds off children's joy instead of their fear. The minions would have worked for Hitler if they weren't frozen during WW2. The Kirby Shiver star theory. That the planet is actually a nuclear winter wasteland and Adeline is the last surviving human. Nothing supernatural happened in the original Blair Witch Project. It was just two friends conspiring to murder another friend. And terrorizing her before doing it. What's one thing you are supposed to like but actually hate? As a 35-year-old woman that loves fashion, shopping, both in store and online. Family members. Not all, but for example, my cousin died a few weeks ago and my mom didn't understand why I wasn't so upset even though I haven't seen him since I was 10. I'm 33 now. I didn't know him well enough to cry over him. I hate that I'm expected to love family members I don't even know. Babies. I don't want to hold your baby, thank you. Clubbing. I always end up spending way too much money. It takes ages to get to the local clubs. I am not a fan of most of the music. And I don't dance. Too self-conscious, and also I'm usually tired from drinking at this point. I used to think I like it because I get to spend time with friends and loud music. But we can do that at home and can actually talk about stuff instead of not being able to hear each other. As a musician, I feel like I should like live concerts. But I've never felt like going to one. I'm perfectly content listening to stuff on my headphones and just vibing in my room. Seeing people grieving on the news. If I've just lost a family member or my house has been destroyed. Keep that news camera out of my face. What is a lesser known but good movie? Murder by Death. Very funny satire. A lot like the movie Clue, but came out earlier. Like a lot earlier. Great cast with David Niven, Elsa Lanchester, Truman Capote, Peter Falk, Peter Sellers, Maggie Smith. One of my favorite movies growing up. The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. Edit. I'm so happy to see that there are upvotes for this. When I was growing up, no one that I knew saw this movie and knew how awesome it was. Batteries not included. It's a Spielberg movie from the 80s about a group of people living in an apartment building who are visited by mysterious robots from space. It's been mostly forgotten by now. But I rewatched it not long ago and it holds up rather well. Also, Willow. It's a charming fantasy movie that I loved as a kid. But outside my family I've only ever met one other person who's seen it. Ladyhawke with Rutger Hauer, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Matthew Broderick. Really good action, romance movie. Thank you for smoking. Subscribe, my brothers.